How's everybody doing? My name is Kenny Honor, CEO and co-founder of Come Home.
Hey guys, me Joy Lawson, COO and co-founder of Come Home. So, Kenny, we want to start with just a little bit of background information, just so the people know a little bit about us.
Yeah, born in Raleigh, North Carolina to two Nigerian parents. So my parents, they were very focused on education. So they definitely rewarded education. Outside of that, they really weren't concerned with my extracurriculars or athletics. I grew up playing basketball. I played basketball, rec league, middle school, high school, etc.
You weren't no good though. You weren't no good though.
We'll talk about that offline. So I grew up playing basketball. It was a big part of my life, for the majority of my life, really up until college. But again, growing up, my parents really focused on education. So positive reinforcement came from that. So yeah, I think, growing up in a Nigerian household, I think it was a big deal and it really helped me get to kind of where I am today. But let's get to your story, man. We know you grew up in, or at least were born in Togo, West Africa. Let's talk a bit more about how that's kind of shaped you.
Yeah. So as you said, I was born in Togo, West Africa. Very similar to you, like traditional, like African household. Grades matter, like very tight-knit family dynamic. So I had two older brothers and an older sister. I'm the youngest. And in 1999 is when we moved to Minnesota, to Minneapolis, Minnesota. And about a year after that, so in like 2000, 2001, my oldest brother left. He joined the military, so he's a Marine. And so it was really just a 20-year-old at the time and a 13-year-old pretty much living together, living alone. Going to high school and then just kind of fending for ourselves. I mean, our parents still supported us and they were still around, but it was just basically just us two, just kind of figuring it out at that point.
So Joy, you always tell me that your parents had two rules in the household. Let's tell the people about those two rules.
Yeah, so my parents always had two rules. It was good grades and no kids out of wedlock. It was it. So as long as we did that, they had no issues with what else we did outside of the house, extracurriculars, whatever. They pretty much left us alone. I mean, obviously the house had to be clean and things of that nature, the normal chores, but good grades, no kids out of wedlock, and we were good. So at this point,
and so far so good. So far so good.
So far so good. I've been fortunate to have good grades so far and no kids. So Kenny, you told us a little bit about your background. What were some of your inspirations growing up?
Yeah, so growing up, I think obviously seeing my parents, go to work every day and provide, that was a big inspiration for me. So very early on, I think I'd say like late middle school, 7th or 8th grade, me and two of my best friends at the time, we had this thing, we called it the WOW, and what it was really just our lifestyle. It was just us kind of being young, wild kids. And we had our own slang that we would talk. And the slang was almost a derivative of the slang that we speak in Raleigh, North Carolina. Like Raleigh has very much its own kind of slang, dialogue, and dialects. And we'd use that, but then we'd like build on it to create our own kind of language. So we very quickly learned like, hey, we can do things and we can create things to put things out there that people will latch on to. So I think that was the very early stage of me understanding what it meant to be influential and have influence. One of my cousins said, hey, we should start a clothing line. Well, actually, he didn't say that. He said we should make shirts. So we ended up getting originally just 2 or 3 shirts, one for me, one for him, and somebody else. And the shirt said "While or Die," and on the back it said "It's a movement." While or die, it's a movement, because we really felt like it was this movement that we really had. So it was my first business, and I was super excited about it because it was so authentic. Kobe Bryant was a huge inspiration to me. Rest in peace, Kobe Bryant, the GOAT. Just seeing the work ethic he put in and how loyal he was to their hard work. And then also Nipsey Hussle, rest in peace Nipsey Hussle as well. Another big inspiration for me. Not only was he a hip hop artist, but he was an entrepreneur. He was big on ownership, big on economic development in the community. You see I'm repping his brand right here. Got the Victory Lap t-shirt on, Marathon Continues. So two of my biggest inspirations for sure that keep pushing me to this day. But let's go to you, man. Enough about me. I want to hear about some of your inspirations. What is it that kind of gets you up and going, ready to rock and roll when we build and come home? What inspired you?
Yeah. For me, like my biggest inspiration growing up, I would say, were my parents. It wasn't until later that I kind of grew appreciation to like my mom's work ethic and just kind of her grind, because she never wanted any parts of anything that had to do with a corporate type of job or working for somebody. She always wanted to work for herself and create kind of the impact that she wanted to make. So in our household, we had a beauty salon literally in the back. So every day I would see people just come into the house and go walk straight to the back to go get their hair done. And like, that was inspiring to me, but at a young age, I never really appreciated that. In my first career, like I was working for a medical device company. I was working in an IT organization for a med device company, and I never felt like that I was making a true impact. And I think that's when I realized that like what my mom was doing was a lot more impactful to me and was more beneficial to me and was my biggest inspiration. Pretty early on when I moved to the US, I've always known that I wanted to go back to Africa and do something there. I didn't know what that something was, and I think, you know, to some extent I'm still figuring it out, but I still know that like I still want to make an impact back home somehow. So after I did corporate America for a while, again, being interested in making an impact in Africa, I started a clothing line that was a fashion accessory company producing men's ties out of Africa. And my mom made me some ties. I was like, hey mom, can you make me some African ties? I think it'd be cool. And she made me a couple.
So your mom was your first supplier?
She was, yeah, I suppose she was. So she made me some ties and I put them on, I wore them to like an event, and everybody was like, oh wow, that's a really nice tie, like where can I get one? And so many people asked me that I was like, maybe this is a business idea. And that's kind of how Fireside started. It worked out pretty well. It was a pretty good business, but since then I kind of sunset it as I came to business school, because that was kind of the focus for me to come to business school, is to learn how to grow and scale a business, and that's what essentially brought me here. So what was kind of the inspiration behind Come Home? Like, how did this idea even come about?
Yeah, so the inspiration behind Come Home. So, you know, as you guys can see, I've come home. I've been through that struggle. I've lost my hair. So my hair loss battle, my hair loss journey, it was real. It was a struggle for me, and it's something that when I talk about it now, I'm comfortable being vulnerable about it and having the conversation, but when I was going through it, it wasn't easy. I very vividly remember it was New Year's Eve 2013. I was in Atlanta with all my guys, with the Wild crew, as I talked about in the past. We were in Atlanta for New Year's Eve, and we were throwing a massive pregame at one of these hotels downtown Atlanta. Everything was great. Pregame was going well. We even had a photographer in the pregame, taking pictures. And I think a couple days after New Year's, he put the photo album on Facebook. You know, this was back in the day when Facebook was popping for our generation. So everything would go on Facebook, tag you in the pictures. I remember getting an alert that you were tagged in some pictures. I go to the Facebook album. As I'm scrolling through, just reliving the night, I'm like, this was fun. I see one picture, it's kind of an aerial shot. I guess the photographer was standing on a couch at the time and taking a picture down on the party or the pregame. And there's this one shot in particular of a guy's head from an aerial view, and the person's hair was thinning bad. It looked really bad. And I was like, yo, somebody needs to shave. They got to come home. Whoever they need to shave their head, because this is bad. But dude, as I'm looking at the picture, I start looking at the blazer the guy was wearing, and I'm like, yo, that's me, man. It was me. And it hurt. Like, I was in shock. So I immediately tried to figure out what are the things to do. So I'm Googling, hair loss, what to do. I found different herbal shampoos, whatever. I tried several things to try to save my hairline. And during that entire time, I told you early on, I didn't wear hats. Like, hats was not a thing. But when I started losing my hair, dude, my hat collection skyrocketed. I mean, literally like exponential growth. So essentially, I was wearing hats every day. And then I finally decided, I had to come home, right? Because a lot of my friends, and this gets a bit into about the brand, why we call it Come Home, but a lot of my friends, the running joke was like, hey, Kenny, you got to give it up. It's time to come home. Like, come on home. So I decided, I think it was 2017 or so, I'm going to come home. Like, I have no choice at this point. I've tried pretty much everything on the market. We're going to come home. So I remember going to the barber. I get in the chair, and he gives me my first ball. He shaves my head. And I remember looking in the mirror, and obviously it was a different look, and I wasn't used to the look, but I knew this was my new wave. So I paid him about $25 or so, and then I gave him a hug, man. because that's my last time it's gonna be with my barber, you know. And barbers, you know, like I think there's a running joke that, you know, guys are more loyal to their barbers than their girlfriends, but I mean, barbers control a lot of stuff, you know. So I gave him a hug because I knew it was kind of the end of our relationship. And I remember walking out of the barbershop that day trying to figure out, okay, like, what's next? What do I need now to maintain this new look? You know, what kind of razor do I need, or, you know, electric or manual razor, you know, or shaver? What do I need? What kind of scalp moisturizer do I need? What do I do to maintain this new look? And I remember reaching out to some of my other bald friends. There's this friend, and his name is Chad, one of my good friends, and he was already bald. He went bald a couple years before, and I remember I used to give him jokes, right? Mm-hmm. I used to give him jokes, but now I'm coming to him like, hey, like, you know, I've come home, like, what do I need? So I'm asking him, what products should I be using? He's sending me products that he's using, but these aren't products that are made for the men's scalp. There aren't products that are gonna solve any pain points for bald men. They're products that are meant for women or meant for guys with hair that he just happens to be using, right? So they aren't specifically made for him. So I thought that was interesting as well. There's definitely a void in the market. So anyway, I remember, like, I'm bald now, and I still wasn't used to the look, right? So I still wear a lot of hats because I hadn't like embraced my new look. So I used to always wear this red toboggan, and people know me for this red toboggan for sure. But I'd wear this everywhere, like all the time, man. At work, on the plane, you know, wherever I was at, I always wear it. And I only had this one because it fit my head a certain way. So I love the way it fit my head, so that's the only one I would wear. So I remember Googling, you know, toboggans for bald men, something like that. And I was thinking, like, wait, I know bald guys love scullies, love toboggans. There should be a website where you could find like these things for bald men. So I type in bald.com and nothing comes up, there's no website. And I'm like, wait, is there nothing that where you have like products specifically for bald men? And that, believe it or not, that was really the early stage of the idea. I was looking for toboggans. I wasn't looking for soft goods or, you know, skin maintenance products for scalps. I was just looking for things, you know, hats that would fit on my head the right way. So that was really the very early idea of Come Home, man. But I tell you, dude, I was down bad. I went through a very real struggle. Normally I'm a very confident individual, and losing my hair was definitely the first time I was losing self-confidence for sure. Where like I felt like I had to leave the house and put a hat on because I didn't feel like myself without it. But all right, that's enough about my hair loss story. It was very dramatic. Let's hear more about yours, man. I know you have a story to tell on your own, so tell me more about your hair loss journey.
Yeah, you know, mine wasn't as traumatic as yours, I would say. It definitely hit me, and I think that I definitely like try to hold on to it for a while, but it wasn't, I don't think that emotionally it hit me as hard as it hit you. And I also wasn't really surrounded by people who would crack that many jokes on me. Like there were lucky. There were a few. There were a few.
You had good friends.
I had good friends. But for me, I noticed it, I want to say it was maybe like 2013, 2012, somewhere around there, right before I moved to Boston. I don't remember like a singular moment where I actually noticed it. Growing up, I had braids. So I had braids like as a youngin' in high school. I cut them, and then I grew them again after high school, and I finally cut them, and like, you know, after that I had waves. And
so you've seen both extremes.
Yeah, yeah. I had a lot of hair, and then I went from a lot of hair to no hair. So definitely seen it. Then I moved to Boston and didn't have a barber. So when I moved there, I was like, all right, well, I can't really let my hair grow because that just looks unprofessional too when you're just in the business world. So I just shaved my head. It was at that point, I would say, like after shaving my head for a while, I think it was at that point that I noticed that it was kind of getting bad, getting worse. So I was in South Africa, December 31st, hanging out with all my friends. We're at dinner, and I don't know what we were talking about, but at some point in the conversation, I was like, y'all, I'm about to shave my head tomorrow, like for real. And they're like, no, you're not. You know, it was girls, like it was a bunch of girls, it was a bunch of guys, and they're like, you're not gonna do it. I was like, no, I really am. Like I'm shaving my head tomorrow morning as soon as I wake up. They're like, you're not gonna do it. I was like, all right. Next morning I woke up, shaved my head, and that was it. And like I said, I held on to it for some years, but I don't think that it was as emotionally taxing as it was for me, as it was for other people for me. And I think that is probably because of my family dynamic, where like my dad didn't have hair, my brothers didn't have hair, so it was like, all right, I just gotta let it go.
Yeah, and then we talk about, knowing other men that are going through this right now. We know the stats too. The stats say that 2/3 of all American men are going to suffer from some kind of hair loss by the age of 35. So 2/3 of all American men. So plenty of men are going to deal with that. But we also know on the flip side, there's research out there. You can find this research by Googling, but from Wall Street Journal, Forbes, GQ, et cetera, that actually says that bald men are perceived to be more intelligent, more successful, more powerful, and more dominant than their peers. So really, on the opposite side, when you finally do come home, there's this benefit, there's this advantage that guys don't know that when they're going through that struggle. It's hard to tell a guy that's like attached to his hair, like, hey dude, when you finally shave your head, when you come home, people are gonna perceive you like this. Because somebody could have told me that when I was going through my struggle, and that wasn't gonna save me, I still had to kind of experience that struggle myself and go through that. But I think I'm glad we're building this now to hopefully help men as they go through that, to let that be known that, hey, like on the other side of this, like let's think about it right now, Joy. The richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, bald. Greatest basketball player of all time. It's probably maybe debatable, but
yeah, he is the greatest.
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan.
Bald.
Yeah.
Some people would say LeBron James, but if you watch basketball, he's gonna have to come home soon, right? So he's gonna be bald. So like, there is this, there's this stigma attached with, hair loss, but really we know, if you look at, and think about Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, biggest actor in Hollywood, highest paid actor, also a bald man. So there's this power dynamic that comes along with it. And we wanna make sure that we're sharing that story with our customers, with men out there, so they don't have to go through that struggle any longer.
Yep, absolutely.